Our guest today has sold more than 300 million copies of his book worldwide, all of which have hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. He's won numerous awards, including an Oscar, a Tony, and the Edgar Allan Poe Award for Mystery Writers of America, and is undeniably the world's master storyteller. He's here today to discuss the latest addition to the bestseller list, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Please welcome Sidney Sheldon. Sidney, it's great to have you with us today on Sidewalks.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Now, you've had 25 major motion pictures, 200 television scripts, and 6 Broadway plays, as well as 18 best-selling novels to your credit. Are you ever surprised by all of these statistics about you?
Totally surprised. It's hard to believe that I've done all that.
I can imagine. Now, many people might be surprised to know that you started your career not writing books, but writing screenplays, directing, and producing motion pictures. Tell me about some of your earlier work.
Well, I started as a reader at Universal, and then later I read scripts for Daryl Zanuck. And I began writing with a young man named Ben Roberts. We were very young. And we went into I went into the Air Corps, he went into the Army. And we were both in New York. I was waiting for another school to open up for larger plane training. And while I was there, we wrote 3 Broadway plays, which were on simultaneously.
Oh my gosh!
And I was under 30, and I went to Hollywood and began directing and writing screenplays.
My gosh. What was it like to work with Judy Garland and Fred Astaire in Easter Parade?
It was wonderful. The first day of shooting, I was telling Judy a story at one end of the soundstage. They hadn't begun to shoot yet, but Fred Astaire was at the other end, and they were lining up the shot there. And the assistant director came over to Judy, and he said, "We're ready for you, Miss Garland." And I started to get up, and Judy said, "No, finish the story." So I began talking faster, and finally I said, "Judy, I'll tell you this later, they're waiting." She said, "No, finish it now." And I said, "What's the matter? Don't you want to do this scene?" And Judy said, "No." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Well, in this first scene, I have to kiss Mr. Astaire, and I've never met him." Everyone had just assumed that these 2 superstars knew each other. So I took Judy by the hand, and I led her over to Fred. And I said, "This is Miss Garland." And he said, "Of course it is. I'm a big fan of yours." And shooting began on Easter Parade.
How wonderful. Oh my gosh, I love that story. You know, you've created many classic TV shows, including The Patty Duke Show, I Dream of Jeannie, and Heart to Heart, which, of course, is one of my favorites. Would you ever consider taking a new project back to television? You know, programming today has become so one-dimensional with reality shows, and I think the public is crying out for some variety and a little Sidney Sheldon sparkle.
Sidney, I couldn't agree with you more. Not about the part of wanting me, but the shows being flat. And all the reality shows, I think, are really uninteresting. Yes, I would. If I had an idea for television, I would get back in it.
Let's talk about your 18th novel, Are You Afraid of the Dark? It is, of course, #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about what the story is.
Well, it begins with some people in different countries being murdered, and 2 of their widows get together to try to find out why their husbands were killed. And they meet, and they don't like each other. But through circumstances, they're forced to work together to try to find out the answer to this. And they finally become warm friends. And as they try to solve the puzzle of why their husbands were killed, someone is trying to kill them. And the book is full of twists and turns, and I hope the readers like it.
So this is one of those books that I'm going to have to leave the light on to read for, right?
Yes.
You know, so I won't be afraid of the dark.
I hope you enjoy it, Cindy.
What was your inspiration for the novel?
Oddly enough, weather, because there are 2 countries now that completely control the weather, and I mean completely, and that's Russia and the United States. And there is a company in Russia that advertises that it will sell whatever weather you want. It will sell you anywhere in the world.
Oh, my gosh.
And this is kind of scary because they can do terrible things with the weather.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
oh, my goodness.
That's part of the book.
Is this planned as a series? Will we see these characters again?
As a series?
Uh-huh.
I hadn't thought about that, no.
Okay. Now, you're also working on a nonfiction book, Sidney Sheldon's Miracles and Other Mysteries. Okay, so the title may be self-explanatory, but what is this book about? It sounds incredibly interesting.
Well, first of all, it's in a very early stage. And it's exploring things that people believe in and don't believe in. Is there an afterlife? Well, you get answers on both sides. Are there out-of-body experiences? Are there ghosts? All these things I want to examine and really do a job in finding out whether they're true or not.
Well, I think that it's definitely one that's going to be popular, that is a very, the subject matter is very contemporary.
Yes.
As we close, do you have any career advice for up-and-coming writers?
I'll tell you the best advice ever given to a writer. Sinclair Lewis won a Pulitzer Prize, and all the universities were after him to speak to their classes, and he turned them down. But finally, Harvard persuaded him to talk to the writing classes. And Sinclair Lewis came out on the stage and looked out at this huge auditorium filled with would-be writers. And he said, "Why aren't you home writing?" And he left the stage. And there's never been better advice for a writer. Don't talk about it, do it.
With that, thank you so much for being with us today on Sidewalks, Sidney. It was truly a pleasure.
Thank you.